Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 88 of ReelBlend, a podcast that desperately wants the Yankees to win the World Series. My name is Sean O'Connell.
That's not funny.
I am the managing director here at Cinema Blend, and part of the reason why I bring up that joke is because Jake is such an avid Astros fan, but also there are 4 teams left in the World Series hunt, and 3 people on ReelBlend staff who care who goes to the World Series. And the Yankees are the only team that we're not represented by. So I figured I'd choose them. And
because the poor Yankees totally need an extra fan. Because God knows they don't get enough support. Let's just feel bad for the Yankees for a second. Why don't we?
But also, I'm from New York originally, and so I should...
well, you don't live there anymore.
Root for the home team, right? That's what it says in the song.
Yeah, but
if they don't win, Jake, it's a shame. Right? Isn't that how it goes?
Oh, God. And this got brought up on social media, and it's a good question. Is Kevin a Nationals fan, or does he just have a hat?
No. He has a hat. He does not.
Is he a Nationals fan, or is he aware of what baseball is?
He thinks the W on that hat is Whataburger.
This episode is going to piss him off so much.
All right, I will mention that we are down Kevin one more time this week, and it's because he's on an amazing anniversary trip. I'm not going to tell you guys where. It's probably top secret. But we will miss him very much so.
Top secret. He posts about it every 30 seconds on social media.
Is he putting it on social? Because I just know in our text thread he's sharing all the places that he is. Oh, okay. Well, then you guys can go to his social media and find out where he is. That means that I am joined by the fantastic, knowledgeable, incredibly handsome, charismatic.
You started this episode behind the 8 ball, dude.
Astros fan, Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hello, Jakey.
Good to see you, my friend. Happy 25th anniversary to Pulp Fiction.
Yes, it is. And I love what you posted also, too, on your social media, that within a few weeks' time, you were able to speak with both Ed Norton and Brad Pitt and mention both times about Fight Club. And the best part about that, too, is you had a great question for Ed Norton. If people did not see, Jake got a chance to speak to Ed Norton from Motherless Brooklyn. And coincidentally, we might have Ed Norton on the show. I'll explain why in a little bit. But he asked him this great question about, now that Ed Norton has directed 2 films, if he were able to direct one of his classic films or even a scene. I like that you gave him that out of even just like choosing a scene from one of your classic movies. Which one would you go with? And you want him to say Fight Club. You need
him on that wall that is Fight Club.
And he did. He said it
he
for
chose
you.
Fight
and then you
Club.
got to just sit back. So tell me how that went.
It was really cool. That, like you said, a lot of times we interview people we love who have starred in movies that we love, and we want them to talk about those movies. Not the movies we're actually there to interview them for, but other movies that they've done in their career. So you kind of reverse engineer it, and you ask a question sort of hoping that they bring up this one movie you really want them to bring up. And considering tomorrow, we're recording on Monday, considering tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of Fight Club, I really wanted to get some Fight Club stuff in there. And now looking back, my 5-minute interview about Motherless Brooklyn is about basically 2 minutes about Fight Club, and then 1 minute about Birdman, and then 2 minutes about Motherless Brooklyn.
Yes, it really was. Yeah. Well, so so go find that on Jake's YouTube page, and then I'll explain the Ed Norton thing for our show in a little bit. I want to give you guys a couple of episode highlights. We're gonna have a few trailers that we're gonna react to this week. A slew of them dropped early on in the week. As Jake mentioned, we are recording on Monday. Because of some travel that a few of us have coming up. We're going to talk about the big movies that are coming out this week, and we will be discussing some of the smaller releases per usual. And again, so as you see in the title of this episode, I guess I'm explaining it now, we have Ruben Fleischer from Zombieland 2, unless we don't. As of right now, it's Monday, and they're still waiting to confirm a potential interview with Ruben Fleischer, the director of Zombieland 2, the director of the original Zombieland, and also the director of Venom. And I actually know that he likes Cinema Blend, and I've done interviews with him a number of times, and they have offered him for the podcast. They've been offering him for the podcast for a long time. They've been saying, oh, he'd be a great fit for you guys, and we want to get him on the show. And of course, Sony was the ones who were nice enough to give us Quentin Tarantino. It's just a lot of times in this business, these things don't come together until the very last minute, and we are supposed to get him on Wednesday, but we don't know yet if we're going to get him for sure. So if we don't have Ruben Fleischer, the good news is we have an interview that Kevin did with Edward Norton on behalf of Middleditch Brooklyn for this podcast that we were going to hold until next week, but you might end up hearing it later in the episode.
More as this story develops, as we say in the news biz.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So until then, we will get to the fact that we have reviews. Okay, let's see. Gabe is saying that you'll know by the title of the episode who we got. Yeah, true enough, I guess. But this will explain to you guys the limbo that we are in by trying to film this early in the week. So reviews, we have 2 that we're getting to read. One is short. It's from Ben K. In his subject line, he puts Kevin Smith, and he says, I will continue to listen to any podcast that has Kevin Smith on it at least once, from Ben K. So if you guys have not yet heard our interview with Kevin Smith, Gabe, what episode is that? Do you know what number it is? I don't know. Just go to the iTunes page and search for our conversation
Gabe.
with Kevin Smith.
What do we even do around here?
Not only is it just great to have Kevin Smith on the episode, but it is a fantastic deep dive into a movie that you guys should be able to see soon, this week, right? This is the reboot?
Next week.
Next week, is it?
No. You're right. It's this week.
It's this week, yes.
Yeah.
On the 19th. I want to say it's Saturday.
Yeah.
Jay and Silent Bob reboot, the Fathom event, where people can go and check that out.
Then he's starting the tour after. Because he's coming to Chicago next week, but I think you can see it this week.
Yeah, I think you can. And he talks a lot about putting Reboot together, and he talks a lot about getting Ben Affleck, which, of course, is a great story involving our own Kevin McCarthy. So if you haven't heard it yet, go back and listen to that one.
Do you know if, like, let's say hypothetically, I missed those 2 days for the Fathom event.
Yeah.
And then I can't see it while he's in Chicago. Is that it? Is that my shot to see it?
No.
I don't see it after that?
No, it's getting a release. I'm pretty sure it's getting a theatrical release.
I feel like if it's a Fathom release, doesn't that imply that it's not getting a theatrical release?
Hold on. Now I want to go check out Box Office Mojo. Or Gabe, can you check Box Office Mojo and just see if it has a distribution?
Gabe, for God's sakes, do something.
Produce! Damn it. Produce! Okay, I'll read in the meantime. Hokies for Life 757 said, loved this podcast, in their subject line. Said, Sean asked to leave a nice review, so I had to make sure I did my part. I'll even take sympathy reviews like this, the people who hear our call. And it's true. I do ask you guys to leave new reviews so that we can read them at the top of the show. Hokies for Life 757 continues to say, I just recently discovered this podcast via the Tarantino episode. Okay, it's another one that you should go back and listen to. Their knowledge of film is what kept me coming back. I love how, unlike a lot of other film podcasts and YouTube shows, they don't focus only on superhero action movies, but actually talk about real filmmakers like Ari Aster. Loved that interview, by the way. Keep up the great work. Josh in Southern Virginia. Thank you, Josh. We appreciate you listening to the show. Okay, now I'm going to click on this schedule here and check and see that there's the Fathom event, but is it going to go wide after that? No, I don't think so. You might be right. You might be right that if you don't go to the Fathom event, then it might just disappear. That's an odd way to approach a movie like this that he's been hyping almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, go see it on Saturday then. If you, yeah. Oh, wait. Release date October 15th. That's Tuesday, it says. We should have done some research before we started this episode. Sorry.
We promise we're professionals.
Yes, most of the time. Okay. We have a giveaway. Oh, so we have been giving, we've been telling everybody that you can go to our ReelBlend contest page that we've been plugging, a link for everybody to follow, because we had a giveaway for the movie Gemini Man. Now, we were having a good laugh before this episode started that, yes, we were very, very excited for the Gemini Man people to work with us, and we were really happy to reward anyone who listens to the show. And then if you listen to the entirety of last week's episode, you know that we went ahead and panned Gemini Man. And then the film didn't do so hot at the box office. $20 million for a Will Smith movie, and it lost second place to Joker in its second weekend. However,
more people entered our Gemini Man contest than saw Gemini Man.
Yes, very true. So these are the contest winners, quote unquote. Congratulations to the following 6 people. And thank you, everyone who entered. We had a great response, and the studio is extremely happy. And so hopefully that means that we'll get to give away a few more things in the future for movies that we like. So the first winner is Jim Coppany. from Chicago, Illinois. Oh, so what they had to name their favorite Ang Lee movie. They almost played like a little version of the blend game with themselves. So I'll mention their favorite Ang Lee movie too. Jim Copney from Chicago, Illinois. His favorite Ang Lee movie is Hulk. Paul Marsh from Plano, Texas said Brokeback Mountain. Also, you guys all win. If I name you now, you're winning a prize pack, which is a backpack, a cell phone wallet, and something else that Gabe told. A t-shirt. Oh, they had a t-shirt? Damn. I should have entered this thing. I can always use a good t-shirt. All right. Our third winner, Andrew Erickson from St. Cloud, Minnesota. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is their favorite Ang Lee movie. Ray Dorda from Staten Island, New York is our fourth winner. He picked Gemini Man as his favorite Ang Lee movie. Hey.
Is it though?
Well, maybe he's only seen Gemini Man. Maybe that's the only Ang Lee movie he's seen up to this point. Ray, you should check out Brokeback Mountain.
Every other Ang Lee movie.
And Crouching Tiger. That's also a really good one. Jacqueline Thomas from Cleveland, Ohio is our fifth winner. She said Life of Pi. And Beverly Lee from Sacramento, California, our sixth and final winner, chose The Wedding Banquet. So our winners came from Chicago, Plano, St. Cloud, Staten Island, Cleveland, and Sacramento. That's amazing. That's a great representation of our Blender family being spread all around the country. And thank you to everyone who entered the competition. We will hopefully have some other ones to give out to you guys later on. Weekly poll. Jake, you're going to have to bail me out here. I hope so. Did you see El Camino?
I did.
Okay, good. Thank God, because I have not yet seen it. I went down to the 919 Film Festival, and it ate up my entire weekend. And I need to wait to see El Camino with Michelle, and so I haven't had a chance to watch it.
I was about to say, if only it were sitting in your living room, available for you to watch at this very moment. That.
Like, I literally could have watched it all day today to be prepared for the episode, but I'd need to wait for Michelle. She would kill me if I saw it without her. So we ran a poll, and the question was, so now weekly polls, we run them on Friday on the ReelBlend social media account, and then we discuss what we talked about here on the show. Jake, here are the three choices. You will tell me which one you think won. The question was El Camino worth it, or should they have left the show of Breaking Bad alone? So essentially, do you think that this ruins a legacy, adds to the legacy, or does nothing at all to it whatsoever? Your choices are totally worth it. Second choice is I'm kind of mixed on it. And third choice is they should have left Breaking Bad alone.
I think people chose mixed on it.
Incorrect. Totally worth it. 64%.
Oh, so Kevin voted.
And then the other two are 18% mixed and should have left Breaking Bad alone. Now, I haven't seen it, so without spoiling it for me, tell me which one you would have voted for and why.
I would say I'm mixed on it.
No kidding.
It answered a lot of questions that I wasn't asking. And the answers were for the most part, fairly interesting.
Okay.
But if I had gone the rest of my life and this movie didn't exist, right, I would be just fine.
Really? Okay.
I was totally fine with the idea of Jesse driving off into the distance. And then part of me kind of liked the sitting around a dinner table with people debating what do you think ended up happening to Jesse Pinkman. And now that conversation's gone because we know. A lot of things happened to that poor boy over the course of 5 seasons. And to a certain degree, the character himself does deserve resolution. Because it was always Walt's story. So for him to, it's like a nice epilogue after you turn the final page of the last chapter of a great book.
Okay.
You probably could go without reading it, but it's there, so you might as well.
Right.
So put that on the poster.
It feels like in our pop culture world nowadays, any kind of vague questions we have about anything get answered with stories or movies or short films or, do we need to find out how they got the plans for the Death Star? Not necessarily.
I like that movie. I take Rogue One over El Camino any day of the week.
That's interesting. But are they not the same thing, kind of, or?
I mean, in theory, the beautiful thing about Rogue One is that it ties up a giant plot hole that has been haunting people since 1977, why would there be a giant hole in the Death Star?
Yes.
So, I mean, if you think about it, every sequel ever, you could argue, do we ever actually really need it?
Okay. Without ruining anything, are there any surprises in El Camino?
Depends on if you're really surprised or not by certain people that show up.
Okay, I don't even mean certain people. I just mean like developments. Are there any surprising developments?
A lot of it is flashback. There's a lot of it is flashback.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
And it sort of made me feel like, I mean, it is basically like watching two pretty good episodes of Breaking Bad. At no point are you ever watching this going like, this is Ozymandias territory. Yeah. Like this is crawl space territory. At no point are you ever thinking that. If these were two episodes that I watched in a row at home, I'd like walk on a Sunday night, I'd walk away going like, oh, those are pretty good episodes. Those are pretty good. You know? Okay. But I wouldn't walk away going like, oh my God, that was Ozymandias. But I feel like because so much of it was flashback, that made me wonder, did Vince Gilligan not have that enough story to fill 2 hours? So he had to kind of flesh it out a little bit because my belief is if this stuff were really that important and it happened back in the day, it would have been in Breaking Bad.
Right.
So the fact that it wasn't makes me think that it's used to both justify some of the things that are happening in El Camino, but also get to that 2 hour runtime. Though I did just see an article that apparently the original cut was 3 hours. So
yeah, I saw that too. Yeah. Talk about a little bit about Robert Forster. He has a pretty big role in this.
He has a really big role. If you're familiar with Breaking Bad, you know that he was on Breaking Bad. Just what an effortlessly. I'm trying to think of the right word. He's one of those actors where it doesn't look like he's acting.
Right.
And I feel like that's something that doesn't get appreciated enough. There's sometimes like you watch something like Joker, and not to take anything about Joaquin Phoenix, but that dude, you walk away from that and you go, that guy he did the most acting. If there were an Oscar for most acting, he would get it.
Yep.
Robert Forster looks like a guy that just happens to be there, and they brought the camera. He's so natural and so easy. He'll never be the guy that does the most acting, but he makes acting look the easiest, and we know this profession well enough to know that it's not.
Right.
And the moments that he has with Aaron Paul in this film, they're well written, they're beautifully acted, and it just makes you realize how much of an underappreciated talent he was. Because
that's awesome.
I feel like in his time, I know he got an Oscar nomination, but I feel like maybe we didn't truly appreciate him to the degree that we should have. And the fact that he passed on the day that movie came out, I think, there's a little bit of tragic irony to that.
I mean, that's William H. Macy too, right? You know, like William Macy and Gene Hackman are the two people that come to mind where, you know, whatever character they're playing, now they have the ability to totally ham it up if they want to, you know, and each of them have in different roles. But also, like, Gene Hackman can play like a senator in something like Birdcage, or a coach in Hoosiers, and every single time you just assume that they are that person. Like, he is that guy, and the cameras just happen to be catching him at that point. You're so right about like people who make it look effortless. It's an uncelebrated tactic because we're so easy to gravitate to. They chewed the scenery in this one, and what a showy performance, and let's reward that kind of thing. Where I think you're right. It's much harder to just blend into the material and serve the character so well that the line blurs between I'm an actor and I'm the actual character that I'm playing.
How many times have you walked into a junket room with an actor who does something like that, who kind of just blends in and is a person, and it takes meeting that actor in person for you to almost appreciate how good of an actor they are? Because then you go, oh my God, you are not like I just assumed you would be this person, and you're not. Right, you're not this person at all. Like, sometimes it actually, and obviously not many people have the privilege to be able to do that, but sometimes it almost straight up takes being in a room with an actor for you to realize how good of an actor they are.
Do you know who that happened to me recently? Was Michael Pena.
Interesting.
I think you just assume Pena is this high energy, fast talking personality because he does that a lot. Mm-hmm. And instead he was very quiet and extremely insightful, like gave the kind of answers that we never get in junket rooms, in that when you asked him a big picture question, he stopped and really thought about it and, gave you a perfectly relatable answer to what you assume Michael Pena has gone through. And then I was like, oh, damn, that's right. You're really good. You're really
Was that
good
when we got him for The Mule?
For The Mule, yeah. That was my most recent example of that. So anyway, news. We're going to shift over to news because we have some major trailers. Do you think we could get
Clint Eastwood for the show?
To discuss. No way. No, never.
Well, not with that attitude.
I don't think we'd get. I don't know if Clint knows what a podcast is, and I'm not going to necessarily fault him for that. Like Clint shouldn't have to know what a podcast is. He's beyond that at this point. But
well, that's my new goal.
All right, we'll put it down.
Gabe, get on that. Do your job.
I was thrilled that we got him for a junket. You know,
Yeah,
like that
true
was
that.
kind of dumbfounding to me. So yeah, I would love to know someone pitching Clint Eastwood on a podcast, and he'd be like, "I do what now?" Clint, you just have to open up a voice memo and put it in front of you so that Gabe can get clean audio.
What's a Gabe?
I don't know what that is.
What's a Gabe?
Is he gonna rap me? All right. So right before we started this show, knowing that we were going to discuss it on the podcast, I watched the trailer for Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Dolittle movie. What is it called? Is it just called Dolittle?
It's called Dolittle.
Man, what is that movie? I don't know what that movie is. I don't understand the concept of Dr. Dolittle. Is it just that he talks to animals? I don't know enough about Dr. Dolittle. Did Eddie Murphy do this already?
He did a much better version, I would say.
I don't know what to make of this.
This sort of seems like it's going to be 2020's Evan Almighty, which is a big budget Universal film that involves an A-list star talking to animals that's going to bomb.
It looks, you know what it struck me as, and this is a weird comparison to make it to, because I think people end up really liking this movie, is Walter Mitty. Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Oh, I love Walter Mitty.
See, that's interesting, because I'd never have gone back to revisit
love that. Oh, I've watched it probably 5 or 6 times.
No kidding. See, it struck me as something that's just overwhelmed by whimsy, right? Like it's a star.
There's literally a character named Sean O'Connell in it.
It is. That is pretty cool. That got a really great icebreaker in the junket room for Ben Stiller. He got a real kick out of that when I got introduced. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Robert Downey at this point can make anything he wants. And this is what he chose.
Yeah. I mean, this is his, I mean, I know you have no control over when movies come out in relation to other movies, but this is his first movie following Endgame. Like this is the one that says, here's the direction I'm going. And it's Dolittle. It's a January release date.
Yes.
And it's Dolittle. And I'm basically doing a poor man's version of my Sherlock Holmes character.
It's what it looks like, doesn't it? With the long hair and the
hair and the British accent. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Former doctor turns to treating animals.
Do you really need to read the plot description of Dolittle?
Creatures. When Dr. Dolittle discovers he can communicate with the animals.
Oh, please tell me more.
Jake, he embarks on a fantastical adventure.
Oh, well, I mean, if it were just an adventure, I'd opt out, but you didn't say it was fantastical.
Fantastical. You're right. What speaks volumes for this one is the January 17th release date.
Yeah.
Not that there are dumping grounds on the release date landscape anymore. You can almost open a good movie anytime.
Yeah, but they're usually Oscar movies that came out in New York and LA in late December, and they're just now coming to your town in January.
This is very, very true. So, that and the trailer did nothing to really inspire much confidence. So let's shift over to Pixar's next one, Onward. And this is the voices of two major Marvel persons, Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. I was going to say Tom Hiddleston for some reason. I'm sorry, Tom Holland, as brothers who, again, embark on a fantastical adventure.
So many fantastical adventures.
My gosh, we're overwhelmed with them at the box office nowadays. But the director of this is the guy who did is Dan Scanlon, who did Monsters University. And Monsters University, see, you make that face? I love Monsters University. And it reminds me very much of a movie that when they announced it, I was like, no one needs that. Like, we don't need a Pixar prequel.
And I saw it and felt that way.
Oh, no. See, I totally disagree. I really liked Monsters University a lot. I thought the idea of sending those guys to college and sort of playing off of their
journey wasn't fantastical enough for me.
It wasn't, but you might get a lot more of that at Onward. I'm not a fantasy guy, but this looks pretty intriguing to me. Are you interested in this?
The thing that hit me, and we've talked about this extensively over the course of 80 plus episodes, is I feel like we're on the verge of a really heartbreaking father-son story. That what struck me about the trailer was it was the first time that any of us knew what the movie was about, which if you haven't watched the trailer, it's they cast a spell to bring back their father who has passed, but something goes wrong with the spell and only brings half of him back, his legs. So they have to go on a fantastical journey to somehow bring the rest of him back. And we were talking before we started rolling today about what is the tragedy, because something just heartbreaking Coco style is going to end up being sad about that resolution. And it's either going to be that my first thought was they bring him back they get him for a moment before he disappears again. Gabe's theory, which was also interesting, is they bring him back and it's not him. It's the wrong guy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But one way or the other, both of our theories are leading toward grown men weeping in the theater while their children look upon them and try to figure out what's going on.
Well, that's what Pixar does.
Yes.
Especially when they're dabbling in original creations. I'm really intrigued by this because it's not a sequel.
Yes.
And, not that the Pixar sequels have been bad by any stretch. Incredibles 2 is entertaining for what it is. Yeah. Toy Story 4, I'm still going to hold on to the fact that Toy Story 4 is not essential in the least bit. Although the reaction from people around our CinemaBlend offices is that they love it. They love it. And I think it's the highest grossing of the 4 Toy Story movies.
There's no way. Not more than 3.
I think that might be the case, Gabe, if you could check that out.
I bet it's 3.
But yeah, I also agree that when Pixar goes for originality, whether it's Coco or Inside Out, not The Good Dinosaur necessarily, but for the most part, when they bat for originality, they're going after heartstrings. And yeah, Onward looks like it's really going to go in that direction. The animation looks great.
I was not crazy in love with Coco, but the last 10 minutes of it just, oh my God, ripped my heart out and stomped on it. It was...
I thought visually Coco was amazing.
Yeah.
The land of the dead, the world of the dead was a really cool place to explore.
I remember just thinking it was particularly longer than it needed to be.
Yeah,
I guess I can see that. That's one of the things
I
think about whenever I think about that movie. That's one of the things that stands out to me.
Let's get to Jungle Cruise, which is people sort of wondering, oh wait, Gabe is going to drop in. Well, don't put in links, Gabe. Just write the answer. Now I got to click on the link and go to where it is. Toy Story movies at the box office. Toy Story 4, the highest grossing movie.
Is it?
433 million.
No, we're doing worldwide, baby. Do worldwide. Come on.
Versus 415 worldwide. 1.069 billion versus 1.067 for Toy Story 4.
No!
And it's still in theaters. It's still playing.
No!
Toy Story 4 is now the highest grossing Toy Story movie of all time. That's sad. But, I mean, it makes sense because they're just adding new audience members every single time they put a new one out. Families are still going to go. It's more kids.
But Toy Story 4, they just hung out in an antique shop the whole time.
I know. Listen, believe me. There was no fantastical adventure going on.
There was no fantastical adventure.
In the least bit. It was very perfectly average.
What was the pitch meeting for that? Let's put them in an antique store. That'll get the kids.
Right. So they're like, Bo Peep and a fork. So someone tweeted.
That's having like a midlife crisis.
Someone tweeted, and I thought this was really funny. They said, nothing speaks to Disney more than the fact that I'm paying $20 for replacement parts for this Forky doll that I have for my kid. Which is literally supposed to be a character made out of trash. Yeah. Thank you, Disney. All right. Speaking of Disney, Jungle Cruise trailer. I'm going to fall on the side of this might look like a pretty good idea, but it's probably going to end up being more hokey than people want it to be. It's The Rock and Emily Blunt teamed, and everyone instantly on social media, their reaction was like, this looks like Raiders of the Lost Ark, matched with Pirates of the Caribbean. And instead, the vibe I got was Lone Ranger. I got a Lone Ranger vibe.
Interesting.
And I don't doubt that those two can be great together, but I just don't Well, I watched it a couple of times because I was writing about it, and he's running the Jungle Cruise trailer. It's kind of like a scam. He's working all of the bits to trick the people that he's bringing through, and it has to call to mind the ride. Obviously, it's a lot of references to the hippo showing up and going behind the waterfall and all that jazz. But then they have to eventually go on an adventure, and I got this sense of just I don't really know. So were you impressed by the footage?
Yeah, I was. Well, I don't know if I'd say impressed. I was pleasantly surprised. You said Raiders. My first thought was the 1999 Mummy with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. Okay. And a lot of that movie rested on the shoulders of their chemistry and their charm together. They were so good on screen together. And I feel like a lot of Jungle Cruise is going to rest upon the chemistry between Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Emily Blunt. And just based on a little bit of the trailer, and then based on some of the early interviews they did at D23, it really seems like they have a very fun chemistry between the two of them. Yeah. And I feel like that's sort of going to be the thing that makes this movie. And I remember, in the months leading up to Pirates of the Caribbean, people had a lot of how could they possibly make a movie out? And granted, there's not going to be anything in Jungle Cruise that is going to come close to the the epic storm that overtook the world like Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think there could be potential for surprise in there. I think it could be fun. And it, as someone who clicked play on that trailer, expecting to spend 2.5 minutes going, all right, like this is a film, this exists. Like I walked out going like, all right, like that one's Zoo Pig.
Yeah. You think they'll have 4 Jungle Cruises like they did with 4 Pirates of the Caribbean movies?
Oh God, I hope so.
There were 4 Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
That means 4 Hawaii junkets.
Do you know what people are going to leave Jungle Cruise talking about? Is Emily Blunt the action star? Because I think no one really gives her enough credit for her action roles. Like Looper is a great film that relied on her being an action star. Obviously, Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
People want to automatically make her Mary Poppins, and she's terrific at that, mind you. But she's a great badass action star.
I mean, can we please get that Edge of Tomorrow sequel?
Yeah, I know, right? Her and Cruise.
I mean, we get so many sequels that we don't want. For the love of God, give us one we actually want.
I even want to say that they have an idea for it. I think McQuarrie said that he's got.
Yeah, McQuarrie that they said that it's like an actually essential idea that would make sense.
Okay, here's the question. Would you trade the upcoming back-to-back Mission Impossible movies for the Edge of Tomorrow sequel?
No.
Thank you. That's exactly why we're not getting the Edge of Tomorrow sequel.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
Right,
No, I would not.
All right, this week in movies.
I would trade most of Phase 4.
Stop it! Why? Why the Marvel hate?
I'm not hating on Marvel. I would just trade most of Phase 4 for the... Okay, you're telling me you would rather see Black Widow,
right,
and Doctor Strange 2 and Mrs. Thor over McQuarrie's next 2 Mission Impossible movies.
Oh wait, no, I thought you were saying over the Edge of Tomorrow sequel.
No, Mission Impossible.
Well, some of those. Doctor Strange, I really do want to see.
Dude, pick a lane, brother.
Third Spider-Man, I definitely want to see.
But I guess that's in Phase 4.
But I really do want to see those back-to-back Mission movies. I think they're gonna be pretty great. All right, on a whole, I'd probably have to, if I had to pick one or the other, I'm gonna pick the 2 Mission movies.
Hot damn!
Only because
doesn't matter. No one cares. Moving on.
Fair enough. All right. This week in movies, we always get to talk about movies that are opening that we haven't seen. And so this will be fun. Have you seen Cyrano, My Love? I truthfully don't know where Gabe gets these titles from. I think a lot of these he's making up. It's like a Mad Lib
just to make it seem like we haven't seen anything.
Have you ever heard of the movie Cyrano, My Love?
I have not.
No one has. Literally, Gabe made that movie up. And neither of us have seen it. Okay, so Jay and Silent Bob.
Gabe, from now on, we should play a game where you have a bunch of movies that are coming out, but one is made up, and we have to try to figure out which one is the one that you made up.
Well, and then like one of us will lie and be like, "Oh, I think I saw a screener of that."
Yeah, I think I, and then I'm gonna be the one dumbass that's like, "You made up Jojo Rabbit."
Yeah, right, exactly. Jay and Silent Bob reboot we discussed. We have not yet seen, but apparently Find the Fathom event. It's either the 15th or the 19th, or maybe both. And then of course Kevin Smith and Jay Muse are going on the Roadshow tour, which of course we're big supporters of. Kevin came on the show and talked about that. That was fantastic. Zombieland Double Tap. Here we're recording this on Monday, as we've discussed. My screening in the market is Tuesday. Yours is also as well Tuesday. Too, right?
Do you feel like there's a weird amount of no buzz for that movie? Like when I was in LA this past weekend and we drove by a billboard, and when I saw the release date, I went, "Oh my God!" Like that comes out in a couple of days, and I just don't feel like anyone's really that psyched for it.
That's true. Although I've heard good things. I think that's all I can say. I've heard good things.
Well, no, I'm not saying it could very well be awesome, but I just feel like no one's talking about it.
Well, I'll tell you something really funny. Michelle was in California with me last weekend. And again, Michelle has a very cursory knowledge of what's going on in the film industry. She hears everything we're talking about, but absorbs very little of it. Like, God bless her. She just doesn't really care what's going on. And we were riding in an Uber to the airport, and we passed a billboard for Maleficent and a poster in the bus stop for Zombieland. And she said, why does Burbank have all these old movie posters up? I said, actually, no.
Nope,
that's a Maleficent sequel and a Zombieland sequel.
If that's not a giant metaphor for Hollywood, I don't know what is.
She was genuinely perplexed as to why both of those posters were still hanging up in Burbank. So, and Maleficent, Mistress of Evil is the next one on our list. My screening is tonight after we record here. Jake, I'm assuming, have you seen it yet? No?
No, I'm good.
No, I think Kevin did see it, though.
Kevin did see it. Kevin did the junket.
All right, well, he's off gallivanting. So, The Lighthouse is opening in limited
I so
release.
badly want to see it.
All right, so this one's Robert Eggers' new film. He did The Witch. It is a black and white period film where in the 1890s, two men arrive at a lighthouse off the coast of New England to work for several weeks at the facility. And one of them is played by Willem Dafoe, the other by Robert Pattinson. And Dafoe is the veteran who's been working at the lighthouse forever, and Robert Pattinson is the newcomer who is probably running away from something, but you don't know 100% how this all plays out. And then as people who watch The Witch know, Eggers likes to really play around with what you are watching, what's real, what isn't real, and you watch these two characters essentially descend into madness because of the isolation, because of the way that Dafoe is constantly messing with Robert Pattinson's character. And it's just it's an uncomfortable watch. It's a tough movie to sort of get through. It's one of the movies where like there's a ton of symbolism and you'll leave discussing a lot of stuff that you watched and saying like, first, was this real or was that real or was this fake or was that fake? But not in a Joker kind of way. It's more like, was this part of the guy's losing his sanity? Was this amplified because of what the movie is trying to say? It's interesting. I'll tell you that. I still don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like it, but I think the performances are unbelievably good. I like both of the guys in the film. And it's hard to say, but like once everything is said and done, once the whole movie plays out, I can't say with 100%. I don't think I liked it. I don't think it's because it's not clear cut and you can end up discussing it a lot. And I'm not sure if the answers are there. And that usually bothers me. So Gabe is saying if anyone in the audience cares, producer Gabe absolutely loves it. It's one of his favorite films of the year. Now,
look, Gabe, if you want to say something, you come on the show, man.
Kevin will lose his mind because they shoot it in a traditional 4:3 aspect ratio. So it just looks old timey. It's just the sort of not quite a square in the way it's presented. And Eggers does an amazing job of like filming in raw elements. It's like constantly raining. It's dark and gloomy because it's inside the lighthouse and everything. And you're watching what could be a play. You know, it could just be these two guys on stage going at each other for the longest time. The atmosphere kind of leads to it, but do you know when you're going to get a chance to see it?
I don't. I looked up when it's coming. I missed a screening in Chicago because I was off gallivanting somewhere else. And I looked up to see when it was coming out. That is near the top of my list. Parasite I'm finally seeing this week, which I'm excited about. Yeah, nice. Finally seeing Parasite. But no, Witch. And I like to see it on the big screen because I like to see a 4:3 film on the big screen. Yeah. So I hope that it opens near me. Which, you know, I live in Chicago. I shouldn't be asking too much for a movie to open here.
Well, I was looking at the Chicago Film Festival for you also, too, because that's coming up
Yeah, it
soon.
might be. Yeah, it might be a Chicago Film Festival. I just hope that, because I know that if I get the screener in, because it's about to be screener season for those, you know, we've talked about getting the screeners for award season. And right. I know that if it arrives on my table before it opens, that I'm not going to be able to have the strength to I'm just going to end up watching it at home. And I don't want to have to do that, but I will.
And a big part of the reason why you need to go see it is the sound. I mean, it's really, he plays around with, there's a foghorn that's
my TV has
off.
sound.
No, it's not the same. It's not like even, there's a movie I saw at the Film Festival 919, which is up in Chapel Hill over this past weekend, called Waves. And somebody said to me, you need to see it specifically for the sound because the director uses a constant barrage of song choices. And it's true. Like once I was in the movie and the music was constantly going, I was like, oh yeah, this is right. You can't replicate this at home. I understand that. In a really great theater that actually plays the sound loud. The theater where we hold our press screenings all the time, there's a conspiracy going around that they have a really old clientele, during the day that complain if the movie's too loud. So by the time we get there for the 7 o'clock or 7:30 press screening, the sound is way down. So like we'll be hearing a Hobbs and Shaw or some such nonsense like that, and it's just like it's low, and it bugs the hell out of me.
Oh, that
why
would
am I
drive
going
me
to the
nuts.
theater?
Oh, that would drive me nuts.
And I've complained multiple times, like the highbrow critic that I am, and I have no pull whatsoever in the market, so nothing changes. But it's really frustrating to go to the theater and then be in a screening where the sound is insufficient. So, and I'm not
Sean
joking
is
with
banging
you.
his fist on the table, going, "I want to hear Willem Dafoe's farts."
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. Is that I'm sad Kevin's not here for the discussion of The Lighthouse, because if anyone has listened to this show, even once or twice, you know that Kevin McCarthy, our third host, loves farts. He loves body humor jokes. He is arguing for us to do bathroom blend all the time. Gabe, I don't know how Gabe feels about it, but Jake is single-handedly being the defender on that wall that will not let bathroom blend happen. Gabe does not want to do it either.
So stupid.
I'm kind of open to it. I don't think it's a bad idea. But the Willem Dafoe's farts are a significant part of The Lighthouse for reasons.
And see, that actually worries me.
No, I mean, it's just when you're isolated with another man in a confined space, submarine.
Okay. Let me ask you
cabin.
something. I hated Swiss Army Man. If I hated Swiss Army Man, am I going to have a tough time with Lighthouse? No.
You might want to wait for that screener. Just pop that screener in. Unless it's, at that beautiful theater that's right across the street from your apartment. But if you have to travel to it, maybe don't do that. All right, which brings us to Jojo Rabbit, another film that's opening this week. Jake got to interview Taika Waititi and the cast. I'm going to say you liked this movie more than I did. I liked it, but you actually love it. Is that right?
Love this movie. Yeah, love this movie. Didn't really know what to expect going in. I really look forward to seeing it again now that I have a better idea of what it is. But it's so many things that work together and work together well that and each one kind of has its own moment to shine. I mean, it is this beautiful mother-son story. It's a beautiful story about what it means to be a 10-year-old kid. But then again, it's also, and it's this quirky, comedy about a kid with an imaginary best friend that gets him into trouble. But it's all under the umbrella of World War II in Germany and Nazis and the murder of millions of Jewish men, women, and children during the Holocaust. And so it's all of these things that shouldn't exist under an umbrella. Mm-hmm. It's like a carnival taking place underneath a rain umbrella. It's all these things happening under this, like, that he's able to fit so much underneath. And without giving too much away, I think, and Gabe, feel free to cut this if you think this is a spoiler statement. I think what I loved most about it is that it really lulled me into this false sense of security, in that it was a fun, quirky little comedy that kind of had me chuckling, and it sometimes had me laughing out loud, and really had me going like, oh, this is cute, like this is fun. And then about halfway through, it almost hits you over the head with a sledgehammer and reminds you this is a movie about the Holocaust. And you can add humor and you can add comedy and you can add whatever, but there is no escaping what happened. And I think that's when I really realized how much I loved that movie. That it was able to do both. We had just, when we did interviews for Jojo Rabbit, we had just come from doing interviews with Edward Norton from Motherless Brooklyn. And I know we're going to end up reviewing that movie later, so I don't want to get too much into it, but it is related in the sense that one of my knocks was on Motherless Brooklyn was that there was no one on set to tell Ed Norton no. He was the writer, he was the director, he was the producer, he was the star, and that movie just seemed incredibly self-indulgent, and there needed to be someone there to be able to pull him aside and say, like, dude, maybe scale back. And Taika Waititi has the same number of roles in JoJo, but I never felt like the movie was self-indulgent or the result of no one telling him no, because he's a filmmaker first and an actor second. I mean, you guys have read this. He didn't even want to play Hitler. They went after several A-list actors and then finally ended up having to take on the role himself. But he's a born filmmaker first, and then we're lucky enough to get him on camera every once in a while. But I would not be surprised. I know we're going to the awards season. I wouldn't be surprised if he walked away with a director nomination, a screenplay nomination, and a Best Picture nomination.
Now, it won People's Choice Award at Toronto, which I thought was a really great indicator for it, because a lot of films that take home that prize convey that into a Best Picture nomination. The one right before this was Green Book that actually won the prize. And I found it interesting that it won a audience award, because to me the tone is the thing that, and again, maybe you're right. Maybe I want to see it a second time because I didn't know what to expect at all, and it never delivered what I expected, which is fine. I mean, that's more my problem than the film problem. But I think it tries to wear a lot of hats, and I'm not quite sure if all of them fit. Without giving away, much of what happens in the movie, like Jake said, it is a fantastic story between a mother and a son. This little boy, Jojo Rabbit, who, like Jake said, has an imaginary friend who's Hitler.
And not even necessarily Hitler, but a 10-year-old's version of who he thinks Hitler is.
Right. Yeah, this boy loves Nazis, wants to fight in the German army during World War II. And so, so the Hitler that speaks to him is the one who would encourage him very much to be a Nazi. And Scarlett Johansson, I thought, was unbelievably good in the movie. She's fantastic as Jojo's mother. But then there's another story, too, that's between this girl played by Thomasin McKenzie, who is the Jewish girl who's hiding in his wall. And I think that's revealed in the trailer,
Yeah,
right?
it's in the trailer.
That's part of it. So then you have to follow that relationship, too. And then there's a lot of other stuff that has to do with the war, and that's where Sam Rockwell's character comes in. And I think I have to see it again a second time to see how well all of those fit together, because I kept watching each of those and trying to figure out, like, well, which one is the movie, which, and it's all of them, and I get it, he's trying to sort of say a lot with all these different things, and make jokes, and one thing I heard from a lot of people who saw it, it played at 919, the Film Festival 919 this week in Chapel Hill. A lot of people who I know came out of it and just said it just wasn't funny. Like, they actually found it not funny. And I think it's front-loaded with its humor. I think the jokes come really fast early on, and then it stops wanting to be funny. But what happens is every time he kind of feels, I thought, that he needed a laugh because things were either getting too heavy or too introspective, then he brought the Hitler character back. Like, that was a crutch for the movie to lean on a bit. And
which is interesting, because it's based on a book,
right?
But Taika is the one that created the whole Hitler's imaginary. Like, that aspect was created by Taika. That's not in the book.
That's not in the book?
No.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, then I really believe that he kind of thought going through it, he needed elements of like a funny thing to sort of break the tension.
Yeah.
And he just chose to inject Hitler as Taika Waititi would, I guess. So I would definitely recommend it. And I really do want to see it again, because I just don't think it's certainly not the kind of movie that just on a surface level you can kind of judge it. I think it's something that you have to see at least once or twice once you sort of figure out what he's trying to do with it.
What kind of player do you think it is moving forward into the award season?
That's a great question, because this year is so competitive.
And also, when it comes, Golden Globes can, really kickstart a movie that needs a kickstart. What category do you put that in? Do you put it in drama or comedy?
It's got to be comedy.
Yeah.
I think that they would definitely push it in comedy. I think it has a much better shot at the Globes.
Yeah.
Than I do seeing it. Although,
it's such a weird year, man.
It's a weird little film,
because
really
and by no means is Rotten Tomatoes, the end all be all of what direction a movie, but it's not right now, based on the people who saw it in Toronto and have started to see it at screenings. It's not super high on Rotten. I think last I saw it was like 76% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it's not.
That's
insanely high.
Like, I'm not 100% sure how many people are really going to get behind it and want to fight for it. I don't know if it has that passionate sort of. 81%.
81. Okay, so it's gone up since last I saw.
That's better. That's 104 reviews. So I think the curiosity factor of just like, what is Taika Waititi doing with a Hitler comedy is going to get people to come out to it. I just wonder if this is going to be the film that people want to fight for. I don't know.
Fair enough.
We'll see. Okay, we have an interview in this week's episode. We just
Who is
at
it?
This point. Well, you and I, personally, at this point right now, don't know what it is. It's
I can't wait to find out.
Ruben Fleischer, or it's Edward Norton. I'm going to throw it to the interview right now with a headline that you all know what it is. So enjoy our current interview with Ruben Fleischer. And we'll talk to you after the episode, after the interview. We'll talk to you after the interview and continue the episode. Gabe, just get me out of this. Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. The movie was a lot of fun, dude. It was really funny.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was very good. All right, we're going to start. Okay, Blenders, as we promised, we are able to sit down with Ruben Fleischer, the director of both Zombieland and the new movie Zombieland Double Tap. Hi, Ruben. How are you?
Hey, Sean. Good to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, man. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We're big fans of you and your films. I got to start where all the Zombieland films, all two of them, now start. I'm considering it a tradition. How do you pick the Metallica song for Double Tap?
Well, the first time around, it was true just fortune. I don't think we designed it to have Metallica start, but we tried lots of songs up against that super slow-mo apocalyptic imagery, and For Whom the Bell Tolls just resonated in such an incredible way that we all were very excited about it. And then it was a matter of getting Metallica to give us permission, which at the time we didn't have a huge budget, and they were incredibly generous and cool and let us use their song, which they haven't licensed a ton. So second time round, not wanting to repeat ourselves too much, but it just felt like the perfect thing to just remind the fans that Metallica is our official theme song for the opening. And this time around, I was really happy to be able to use Master of Puppets, which is one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs. And it really feels like it just fits perfectly with that sequence.
Do you know, you say you fear repeating yourself, but I will tell you as a fan, I would have been pretty disappointed if you didn't start with a Metallica song. It's funny, it's become the thing of these movies.
Well, I mean, where do you go from there, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you don't even want to update it. You want to find somebody 10 years later.
Yeah, it's just like, it's just a tough bar. It's kind of like with the Bill Murray. You know, when you start with Metallica and Bill Murray, there's not many places you can go beyond that. So sometimes you just have to follow the old edict, if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Well, okay, but that's not to say you guys don't have a lot of new things in this film for sure, and that's what I want to get to next. Is I do love all the new characters that you brought in. Obviously, Luke Wilson and Rosario Dawson are standouts for it, but the Zoey steals the show. So if you could really just talk about all of the new additions and how you kind of decided on which personality types you wanted to introduce into your already established Zombieland family.
Well, that was one of the really fun things about doing this movie, was figuring out how to expand the world of Zombieland in a sequel, and trying to think about who would still be alive and what kind of archetypal characters would still be surviving and be good comedic balance for our pre-existing characters. You know, I think that Woody, Jesse, and Emma and Abby are all kind of archetypes in themselves. And so by including somebody who's like a match for Tallahassee, it felt like we needed someone who was his equal or even beyond him. And Rosario certainly fits the bill. She's just as tough and cool and badass as he is, and they share a common love for Elvis. And then when thinking about who's kind of the opposite of Wichita, this sarcastic, very cool woman, we were really excited to come up with Madison, who's kind of the antithesis of those things. She wears pink Juicy Couture tracksuits. She's like Von Dutch hat. She's a little bit stuck in the Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton era of pop culture. And she could very easily be mistaken for a dumb blonde, but she's certainly not that. She's very bright, and she stands up for herself. But at times she can be a little ditzy, I guess.
It reminded me a little bit. Are you familiar with Will Forte's show, Last Man on Earth? Did you watch that at all?
I only saw the first couple episodes, but I don't think he'd met anyone at that point.
The challenge that they face is anytime they brought in new characters, you had to sort of explain like, okay, well, why would you guys be here? And I kept sort of thinking about that as you were bringing in new characters into your film.
Yeah, I think everyone has to have, Columbus's reason for being are the rules. Wichita's is that she's never going to trust anyone. She'll get one over on them before they can get anything over on her. Tallahassee's just, the most badass. So Madison, she survived in large part because she spent the last 10 years in a freezer in Pinkberry. And then the hippies, there's a whole bunch of hippie pacifists who have given up violence, who all live in a commune together, and their means of survival is more avoidance. They've built this incredible commune, I guess, and have surrounded it with a perimeter wall, and they live on the rooftop so no zombies can get to them. And it's kind of just like an idyllic place to be.
It kind of is. I had to imagine you had a lot of fun watching Zoey and Emma build a chemistry. Can you talk about how those two played off of each other since they're so different on screen?
Yeah, that was a really nice thing that evolved over the course of shooting. We had so much fun making this movie at Atlanta, and I think that, I'm sure Zoey looks up to Emma in a real way, and Zoey's just a really great person to have around and was so funny on set. I mean, some have said she steals every scene that she's in, and she definitely on set was the one who made everyone else laugh the hardest. So I think there was a instant appreciation for her because it's a tight-knit group, those four, and so I imagine it must be pretty daunting to come in as the new kid. But Zoey came in with guns blazing and completely blew everyone away, and I think very quickly earned everyone's respect for how funny she is. And I think Emma, it's so funny because when we made the first one, she was only 20, which is younger than Zoey is now. But now that she's, 10 years later, kind of an elder statesman with an Oscar under her belt, I can imagine that Zoey looked up to her in a real way. And I think Emma was happy to kind of, take her under her wing a little bit.
I just love watching Emma Stone's facial reactions in scenes where she doesn't even have lines. She's just fun to watch.
It's so funny you should say that because, when you edit a movie, you watch it thousands of times maybe. And at this point, I know every line by heart, and, there's not much new, except every time I watch it now, I just watch Emma. And you're exactly right. Like, you hit the nail on the head, and I'm impressed actually because the things she does are so subtle that probably, unless you're really focused on them, you'll miss them. But I mean, if you watch Emma in every single scene, she's just so present, so real and authentic, and just the things she does make me laugh so hard. They're super subtle, but she's just a incredibly talented and brilliant actor.
Oh my! I actually think she conveys so much, with facial. I end up just watching her most of the time when she's on screen because I know she's moving the story forward or reacting to things in ways that I know I'm going to appreciate.
Yeah, she's the greatest.
All right, is someone on the creative team an Elvis nut? Because of all places that you guys could go, I didn't expect Graceland, but it's pretty central to the film.
Yeah, I think it all kind of sparked from Woody, that story about that he tells Rosario at the Hound Dog when they're at the bar about Elvis and doing an impression standing on the table is actually a Woody Harrelson story that the writers incorporated into the film.
That's awesome.
He's definitely someone who, he didn't have to work on his Elvis impression for this movie. Like, that's something he came to the table with. So I think it just all, the thing I love most about this movie is that it all comes from character. And so you can imagine that Tallahassee is a big Elvis nut. And so at the beginning of the movie, he tells Little Rock about it and mentions it and says, I want to go there with you someday. And so I think it's really sweet that once she parts ways with our heroes, she still ends up going someplace that means something to the guys she's trying to get away from, which I think is really sweet and allows them to track the story to there.
That's awesome. I also want to get into the fact that, it is very character driven, the film, for sure, but you have an amazing shot. And I'm not going to give anything away beyond saying that it's a fight in a motel. That's a single take, it's, or is there a stitch in there? Talk to me about the construction of that scene and when you shot it and how difficult it was to put together.
Yeah, it appears as a single take, but it actually took a day and a half to film. It's a series of shots. I think there's 7 total that have seamless cuts between them. So it was really fun to shoot because collectively as a group, there's 6 people fighting together in one space, and everything was pre-blocked, obviously. We knew exactly what we were going to do. And the stunt coordinator and the stunt team had laid it all out for us beautifully. But then when it was our turn to shoot it with the principal cast, we'd shoot it up to a certain cut point, do it as many times as we could for that take to make sure it was perfect, and then carry on forward with the next piece. And I was having the guy who runs the video tap output all the clips to me, and I was editing them in my laptop on iMovie as we were shooting it, just to make sure all the cuts were seamless. And it was really fun because at the end of each new piece, it was like we were building building the sequence linearly. And so the cast would watch, like, after each chunk was added, say, oh, yeah, that looks good. Is everyone cool? You like what you did? Okay, we can move on. Because each one was a wonder in of itself. You couldn't change it once it was locked because we had to match the ins and outs. And so if everyone was good, okay, moving on. And then at the end of the whole thing, we got to watch the whole fight in real time right there on set, which was I think we all felt a huge sense of accomplishment.
That's incredible. Is that normal? Does that happen on set a lot?
I'd never done it before, but I've never done a super ambitious pretend winner before. But yeah, it was really, really cool. And I have the outtake from the video tap still on my computer, and there's a really nice moment at that final scene where Emma goes, "Wow, those guys are a bunch of dicks." And then there's like a couple like heavy breaths between her and Rosario. And then you hear me say cut in the background. And then you just see her, lose her character and just start screaming, yeah, we did it. Like, because everybody knew that was like the perfect take. And it's just like seeing her face shift from Wichita to Emma Stone just being like really happy. It's an incredible moment.
Please put that on the DVD. I would love to see that. I think that'd be awesome. Okay, obviously, you guys are, you play with the zombie genre in so many different ways in the first one and this new one. But of course, with this one, it's the introduction of new types of zombies. And the one I'm most curious about is just the T-800. Talk to me about putting that one together and how you decided to introduce them into the story.
Well, as you may have read in multiple interviews, we've indicated that part of the reason the movie took so long was because there were so many different drafts of the script and we had to get it right. But we came up with the idea. Originally, they were called super zombies, but the basic premise was that Tallahassee had kind of grown tired of killing zombies. He'd lost his passion because it just wasn't fun anymore. They didn't present a challenge. It was kind of a meta commentary on maybe a little bit about zombie culture and how just zombies had gotten a little boring. And so he'd lost his fire or spark. And so he doesn't even bother killing him because in that draft, I think they were all kind of like the homers. They just were kind of like idling around and didn't present much of a threat. So when the super zombies come, it was like, someone had lit his spark once again, and he had a reason for being, and finally, like, the world's greatest zombie killer had met his match. And so I think that's in there a little bit, but the basic idea is that up until this point, they've survived 10 years relatively easily, outsmarting the zombies. But now with these T-800s, there's a real threat, and especially since Little Rock's with a hippie with nothing but a guitar to protect them, they feel an added sense of urgency to go and rescue her.
You know what I love, too, about it is when you guys break the fourth wall, when Jesse sort of narrates to the audience, he very much references things that he knows exist in our world that aren't present in theirs. I think that's a really interesting way for a narrator to have understanding of an audience and the things that are available to that audience, and letting you know, like, he's like, in a world without YouTube, this is what we do to kind of entertain ourselves. That's all Rhett and Paul, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Paul Wernick and Reese special.
It's really entertaining. I love the way that they do that. You mentioned the 10 years between the two films, and I'm just curious, which character of the original batch were you most excited to come back and revisit and kind of see where they were 10 years later?
That's not fair. That's like Sophie's Choice. I think the obvious answer is Lil Rock, just because she's the most changed from before. But I was really just excited to get everyone back together. It was kind of an all or nothing deal. And so having the original cast back, especially given all the success they've had, and the fact that I've worked with each of them on one of my subsequent movies. Jesse was in 30 Minutes or Less, Emma was in Gangster Squad, and Woody was in Venom. It was like just a family reunion, and we were also happy just to get to work together.
Ruben, a bunch of times writing about the film as it came together, I swear we wrote stories that Dan Aykroyd was part of this. Did we misreport stuff, or did his scene get cut?
No, he was never in anything. There was a earlier draft a long time ago that featured not only Bill Murray, but the Ghostbusters. I think it was long enough ago that perhaps even Harold Ramis was still alive. Okay. And I think that draft leaked somehow, and so somebody took it upon themselves to enter it into IMDb, but it was never anything that we actually pursued.
Is that hard to sit on, where you want to sort of correct people and say, no, we're not doing that?
It doesn't come up that much. I mean, I guess we just did.
Yeah, got you. You just did. All right, well, I'll get you out of here on this one, too. I do want to shift gears. You mentioned Venom, and I'm just curious why you didn't return for the sequel. How come you're not back from Venom 2?
Well, I was busy getting this movie done. I think they're already shooting that film, and I just finished this a couple weeks ago, so the schedule didn't allow it.
It really was just a matter of timing.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're trying to get that movie out for next fall, like 2 years from the original release. And yeah, I basically went from finishing Venom. I had a week off with my family, and then went straight into prep on Zombieland 2. So I've been making a movie for the past 2.5 years with hardly a break. So I definitely wanted to get this one finished, and make it the greatest I could, and then I'll probably take a little breather for myself.
It's a really good problem to have. Are you slightly disappointed you're not able to continue in that world, though?
I think I'm really excited to see what they do with it. I'm really excited to see what he does with his character, especially.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad. I wonder if he signed on, thinking that you might continue since you introduced him.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
We will have to see. Ruben, thank you again so much for jumping on with us. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest on ReelBlend. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for checking out the movie, and I really hope anyone listening to this enjoys it.
Yes, go see it, guys. It's really funny. If you love the first one, you're going to love this one too. Zombieland Double Tap is in theaters starting on Friday. Well, we would like to thank
that person
for coming on the show.
I really enjoyed when that one member of ReelBlend asked that question about the film that one person was talking about.
That was a great question, a very insightful, something I always wanted to know about
that film, that
project. How long it took to come together. This is really hard to do when we don't necessarily know who we got. No, I mean, in all honesty, we really want to thank all of the guests who come on ReelBlend and all the studios who help make these interviews a reality. And we definitely know a bunch of other ones that we're banking to have on the show very soon. So keep it locked here for our weekly conversation with people who are making the movies that are coming to theaters that you guys love. Talking about movies that people love, we're at the Blend game, and this is one of the most fun experiments that we've been doing. I love that you brought up this idea, dude. This was a really fun one. It's decades. We've done 60s blend. We've done 70s blend. We are at 80s blend. And I know I've said this before, But the interaction with people on social media this week was fantastic. And
I'm pretty sure every movie released in the 1980s was chosen by someone.
Yeah, right, exactly. It proved how difficult this one really was. Although, I'll say the two movies that I saw the most mentioned by people were Back to the Future. A ton of people said Back to the Future. And, oh, shoot, there was one other.
See, I felt like notes? Raiders was the one I saw the most.
You saw Raiders a lot?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just Back to the Future. I saw a lot of that. Yeah, there were a bunch of, I mean, obviously you could pick any of those ones. I get to go first. And again, Jake and I were having this conversation before we started this week's episode. It almost feels like our choices are a little bit anticlimactic. If you've paid attention to the show in any way, stretch or form, the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s are such influential decades for the film fans that we have become. So we have talked at length about movies that mean the world to us. And so it's really funny. Like when we started talking about 80s Blend, I started getting so excited about like all the choices I could make and why I would want to make these choices. And I thought about Back to the Future, and I thought about Ghostbusters, and I thought about all of these movies that mean the world to me. And then someone on social media, and I forget who it was now at this point, they were like, duh, idiot. Like before Endgame, your favorite movie of all time was Die Hard. So it has to be that. And I was like, oh, geez, you're right. It has to be John McTiernan's first Die Hard film. And it is. It's the movie that had made me essentially who I am today. I love, it's a perfect movie.
Is it still your number 2 of all time?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Behind Endgame.
Endgame, I'll tell you, not to default too much into Endgame conversation, but I want to remind people this. I love Endgame so much. I freaking love it. And every once in a while, I'll remember that it exists and I own it. And then I'll just be like, ooh, I can watch Endgame right now. And then I'll put it in my DVD player and I'll start watching it again because it's here.
By choice?
It exists. Yes, I love it. I love everything about it. Like I can go and just pop in I might skip right through to the time heist, or I might skip to the end battle against Thanos.
I also wish I could have done that.
But those scenes are there. They still exist. They're in this movie. And so this past weekend in Chapel Hill, I keep mentioning Chapel Hill. I'm overdosing on that festival. I hosted a panel with Joe Lettieri, who is the head of VFX supervision at Weta.
Oh, that guy's awesome. I interviewed him in New Zealand.
He is a legend.
Amazing. I have a book signed by him. He is awesome.
He's great. I mean, dude, he was instrumental in designing the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park.
Multi-Oscar winner.
He worked on it. He's a 4-time Oscar winner who has worked on VFX with Scorsese, Peter Jackson, James Cameron. He was raving about Avatar 2 and all the work that they're doing on Cameron's next film. So I know.
See, I get more excited hearing him rave about Avatar 2 than I do Jim Cameron.
Yeah.
Rave about Avatar 2.
So at the end of the presentation, Joe had a sizzle reel of Weta projects that they're working on. And in that sizzle reel, they showed all the Endgame scenes. And I was like, oh my God, you worked on Endgame. Like I got so excited because of the fact that they worked with Brolin and they designed the Thanos battle. Yeah, I'm all in on Endgame. And so it speaks to the fact that it dethroned Die Hard, which to me, again, is a perfect film. Like it is that film that I could watch every day of my life and never tire of it. I love Bruce Willis as John McClane is the ideal type of hero that I love in a movie. He is everyday guy, in over his head, constantly has to think himself out of a problem, trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys, failing every once in a while. I love heroes that fail. We don't get that enough. Too often they are larger than life and nothing can stop them. There's nothing more boring to me in a movie. And Shaw. The John Wick franchise.
They killed his dog.
I understand that. But I mean, there's only so many perfect headshots you can pull off in a movie before I start to check my watch. I just think I think that everything about the first. I'm not selling anybody on the first Die Hard. Obviously, you guys know what an amazing film it is. But again, I go back to the fact that it's the first R-rated movie I got to see in a theater, where I begged my parents to let me go see it just because I knew like the trailer looked amazing. And then sitting there watching it, it completely transformed me. It transformed me into someone who realized whoever works on that is what I want to do for the rest of my life. To the point where when we were in LA just recently, and I didn't even know that Kevin was staying in the hotel that was right next door to the Fox building, which is Nakatomi Plaza. And I was talking to Kevin as we drove to the theater. We were in an Uber, and we get out, and I look up, and there it is. Like, there's Nakatomi, and I'd never seen it before, like up close. You know, I was kind of seen it on the horizon as I drove past on cars. And I get out of the Uber, and we're walking into his hotel, and I see it. And I just started walking toward it like a beacon. And Kevin's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Like, let's go take pictures." And I was like, "Dude, that's it. Like, how many years have I watched the outside of that building and watched everything happen, like helicopters flying around?"
Because it was a Fox movie, so they just used their own building.
Yeah, they used that building. I'm looking back, like, down the street now, and where the car is coming in, where they shoot the bazooka at the car, and I'm like, God, this is the street. Like, this is all of it. Like, it was all coming together, and I have never been that excited to, like, how many sets have I been to in my life? That's a set. Like, that's a location for a movie that I adore, and you could go to it. You can just walk to it. It's there. So, obviously, for 80s Blend, my pick is Die Hard.
Die Hard is a perfect action. Like, you know, there are a handful of movies that I would open the folder labeled perfect and place inside, and Die Hard is one of them.
Your pick then is?
My pick is arguably, and I know, like, over time there have been movies I'm like, oh yeah, I think this might be my favorite movie of all time, but I really think if I were to dig deep into my soul, and there were potentially even a gun to my head, and I was strapped to a lie detector test, and someone asked me, what is your favorite film of all time?
Okay. I
think I'm 99.9% sure deep down in my heart the answer is The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, interesting.
It's just it is the best film of my favorite series of all time.
Okay.
And it does a lot of the stuff that you kind of describe about Die Hard, which is it takes our very archetypal heroes and kind of breaks them down a little bit. I mean, the original 77 Star Wars was all about those classic archetypes that George Lucas kind of modeled Star Wars after, and you know, they kind of followed a very classic, I mean, perfect for that particular film, but a very classic formula of how things, like beats that needed to happen, things like characters that needed to act a certain way. And once A New Hope was completed, then they were free to go, but what if they didn't?
Yeah.
What if they didn't do that? So you have the foundation, and you have the archetypes that you think you know going in. And then it just goes, fuck you, now watch what we're going to do. And the bad guy wins. Right. And we lose one of the heroes. And a relationship that we think might work or might not work goes two completely different directions. And this band of good people that we love gets shattered and broken up. And we're left with uncertainty. And there's this unbelievable surprise ending, which I would imagine at the time... Because I grew up just knowing that was a thing. That Darth Vader was Luke's father. Did you really?
You didn't know?
No, I grew up knowing. Like, that was such a famous line. I grew up like because I would imagine like tell me if I'm wrong. When you saw it in theaters,
knew before
I did.
You saw it.
I did. Because the reason I got into Star Wars is I think I was like 7 or 8 when they re-released the special editions,
right?
In theaters to kind of get people hyped for Phantom Menace.
Okay.
And that's when I asked my dad, like, wait, what are those movies? And, you know, I've told the story before. My dad turned around in slow motion like he'd been waiting his entire life for me to, you know. But by that point, they were already starting to show, like, clips and stuff. And, of course, the clip you're going to show is I Am Your Father. So I kind of, I think, honestly, to answer your question, I think the question I asked my father that got him like, oh, we need to go watch these is, wait, is Darth Vader really Luke's father? So I guess maybe I didn't know going in. But, I mean, when you saw it in the 80s, and there was that, 3-year gap between Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
Did you walk out just assuming Vader was telling the truth? Or was there this idea of, is he potentially lying?
No. It never crossed anyone's mind that he was lying. And in fact, I think the reason why that twist is so devastating is because, not that there wasn't gray area and vagaries, but up until Empire, most of your traditional blockbusters were very clearly defined of good guy, bad guy, you know? And how are the good guys going to triumph over the bad guys? And I cannot recall too often taking the bad guy and giving you any reason to humanize him, you know, but to connect him to your lead in that way, I think that's what blew everybody's mind. So no, I don't think anyone thought like, oh, he's lying to him or trying to trick him. Nowadays, I think that that deception or some level of deception has happened so many times in movies.
I mean, like even similar like with Last Jedi, we're all questioning whether or not Kylo Ren was being honest about Rey's parentage.
Yes, exactly.
We're all questioning, we've seen the last few years, okay, was he really telling the truth or is it just sort of setting up? But Empire Strikes Back is the most beautiful shade of gray I've ever seen in my entire life, because all the characters, there are moments where you start to question, is Luke going to go over to the dark side? And then you start to question, well, like, if Anakin turned into Darth Vader, is there potentially good? There's this, even Lando, who was supposed to be Han's friend, is kind of this scoundrel, and he kind of turns him over, but he ends up helping him at the end. Like, there are all these, it's so beautifully complicated and just leaves you exhausted and leaves you going just like, what do we do? Like, where do we go from here? It is a perfect
people,
movie.
You forget it is perfect for that reason, because people also forget that when that movie ended, nowadays, when a movie ends on a twist, we kind of know when the next one's coming because we announce sequels and release dates. Yeah. When that movie ended, everyone was like, "Oh, that can't be the ending!" And like, when is the next one? Like, no.
And our hero lost a hand.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
He lost a hand. I mean, do you remember when? And I'm not going to knock these movies because I actually really like all three Gore Verbinski Pirates movies.
Okay.
But when 2 and 3 came out, they were like, the dates were already released. Like, one was coming out one summer, the other one was coming out the next summer. And the second one ends with Jack Sparrow being eaten alive by the Kraken.
Okay.
And imagine if that had happened in movies 40 years ago, where you didn't know when the third one was coming out, and the last one ends. I mean, there was not that there wasn't drama to that, but it's sort of like, well, okay, he's obviously going to be fine because he's coming back because the next one comes out in like 6 months or 12 months.
I know. And now, unfortunately, we know too much. We just know too much about contracts and we got 3 more movies.
Yeah. One of the questions I really want to ask, and this is sort of looking forward to the future, we get to interview Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton.
We do.
Coming up in a few
Kevin
weeks he might combust
happens.
before. I kind of want to go in before Kevin just so I can catch him whenever he comes out of that room.
Yeah.
But do you remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was pretty young when these movies came out, but when T2 came out...
Stop reminding me how young you were before.
Well, no, because I'm trying to remember,
like 30
and I can't remember... I don't know if this is something I remember or just what I've been told, or maybe I remember incorrectly. But when T2 came out in theaters, they didn't openly advertise that he was the good guy, did they?
No, not at all.
So that was a surprise. So that's something I actually want to ask Arnold and Linda Hamilton is, can you do that? And that was such a big deal that Arnold was the good guy.
Yeah, no,
in T2.
I think if you go back and find some of the earliest trailers, they used footage like, remember when he's coming through the, he's got the roses in the box.
And then it's the shotgun.
Shotgun.
Because those scenes out of context, he still looks like the bad guy.
They very much played that up I think they showed like Linda Hamilton in the Institute and she's like running from him and things like that. Like,
and even the T-1000 out of context could look like the good guy.
Yes, they definitely did not lean into the fact that
So to your
Arnold
point,
was.
like, can they even, and it's sad that I feel like kids will never experience that, but can you even do something like that anymore? I mean, I guess honestly the closest thing I can think of is the fact that, I mean, 2 examples. I mean, remember when the Super Bowl a few years ago, there was like, oh, in 30 minutes when the Super Bowl is over, there's a new Cloverfield movie that's going to be on Netflix.
Yes.
That was pretty shocking.
A bad one.
And a bad one, but still, that was a pretty cool move. And then a Breaking Bad movie going from, we don't even know if they've shot it yet, to it comes out in 3 weeks.
That was very cool.
That was that's the closest thing I can think of.
I don't know if I've said this on the show or if you and I have just discussed this in person, but I would have loved if Joker just advertised itself as an Arthur Fleck movie.
Yeah.
And you never knew that he was Joker until you went to the theaters to see it.
Yeah, but no one would have gone to see it. That's the problem.
Nobody would have gone to see it yet, but that thing is dumb. We should have talked about the box office of that movie. I think that movie's
Gabe
crushing.
said he was Jokered out.
Gabe does more to sabotage this show than anyone. All right, well, Kevin McCarthy is vacationing right now, but in true Kevin fashion, took the time to record his own version of his 80s blend pick, and I think he's going to include Lauren, too. So why don't we throw to his clip and find out if both of them shared their 80s blend pick with the ReelBlend family.
Kevin,
right?
I knew what you were going to pick, Die Hard. I don't know what Kevin's going to pick.
No, I really don't know either. So let's find out. Let's all find out together as we listen to Kevin's 80s blend pick.
Hey guys, Kevin here.
And Lauren.
And we are currently in the in the East China Sea, right?
We're in the East China Sea. We were in Okinawa, Japan yesterday, and now we are sailing to Nagasaki today. And we're actually in the future because it's Tuesday, October 15th here, so it's actually our wedding anniversary over here today.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part is I know it's, well, technically speaking, as we're recording this, it's 10:30 in the morning on Tuesday. It's 10:30 at night back on the East Coast. So we are celebrating our wedding anniversary, and we wanted to chime in for the 80s blend because the 80s is such an important year in our lives because we were both born in the 80s. I would argue the 90s were more influential on my movie taste because that's kind of when I was growing up with Pulp Fictions and Face Offs and The Rock and all those movies. But the 80s has a very specific nostalgic value to it because of kind of the way it affected the way we all grew up. So I'm going to let Lauren go first with her 80s blend pick. I am curious if I'm right at all about my predictions for Jake and Sean's, who I know I've already given them on the show, but I'm curious, based on knowing them as well as I do, I would assume that Sean went with Die Hard and Jake went with Empire Strikes Back, but I know sometimes we can find different routes to find what movies meant to us personally over the years.
I think those are good predictions for them because hasn't Sean said that Die Hard was his favorite movie of all time until Avengers Endgame?
Yeah, Endgame.
Okay.
Was,
see, I know things.
Yeah, and then Jake obviously is the biggest Star Wars fan I know. So
yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let Lauren go first with her pick for 80s blend. Again, that one of the things that we run into every week with this game is the difference between favorite and best. And I think we've all decided and know that when we're mentioning these names, these movies, these are personal favorites, personal movies that meant a lot to us, not necessarily the greatest movie of the 80s. Mm-hmm. But all right, here's Lauren's.
I mean, honestly, for me, there's tons of films that came out in the 80s that I love and that I'm obsessed with and that like have shaped me. But this is literally like no question, no competition for me. Back to the Future.
Part 1, right?
The first one. It came out in 1986.
And 2
right?
technically is the 80s, right, as well? I think it's 89.
Yeah, So, I mean, I was born in 1987. The first one came out in 86. I just grew up on that trilogy in the 90s. My brother and my family and I would just, like, rewatch it all the time. And I think I've said this on, like, Twitter and have said to this day, like, I think Back to the Future is the most rewatchable movie of all time. I just don't think, like, you could literally, could be on TV, you could be over at a friend's house and it's on. Like, it's just something where whenever it's on, I'm going to sit down and watch it. The characters of Marty and Doc are so iconic, and even people who don't watch a lot of movies know what Back to the Future is, and it's just like one of my favorite trilogies of all time. Like, I absolutely love Part 2 and Part 3 as well, but the first one's definitely my favorite, and it's like just one of the, it's like one of my, it's in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. So with that being said, like, that's easily my pick.
It's one of the best movies ever made. And Zemeckis and Alan Silvestri, that entire film is so iconic.
The score. And everyone knows the score.
Right. And it's also so influential on our culture. I mean, you're talking about, in my opinion, I think it's one of the greatest trilogies of all time next to Lord of the Rings and obviously the original Star Wars trilogy. And as much as I know Jake loves Star Wars, I personally find Back to the Future to be something I rewatch more often.
It's hard to make trilogies like Indiana Jones. I mean, like that trilogy is like The Last Crusade is like my personal favorite over Raiders of the Lost Ark. I know there's a lot of Temple of Doom fans out there as well, but like that whole trilogy is just so amazing, and I almost feel like they can't make trilogies like that, classic like that anymore.
Yeah, that's why I will always still consider Indiana Jones to be a trilogy, even though there's a fourth one. All right, so my pick is actually going to be personal in the sense of I went with the original Ghostbusters. And again, I understand this is not the greatest movie of the 80s, but from a personal standpoint, looking back on that film, it was such a big deal for me. I remember getting my Proton Pack as a kid. I have really fun photos of myself wearing a Proton Pack with my dad. You know, we're all playing around. I mean, that was such an iconic thing. And that movie was so, in my opinion, ahead of its time. It also has incredible performances. I mean, Bill Murray, Ivan Reitman. Ivan Reitman directed it, obviously. Harold Ramis is amazing. It is Sigourney Weaver. It was just a movie that meant so much to me from a comedic standpoint, but also it also scared me as a kid. Even the second one had some scary elements with the painting. But the first one, to me, is a great example of why practical effects, in my opinion, will always be better than CGI. I mean, you got to think about the way they created that film in the 80s with the minimal special effects that they had. Specifically, the scene that I always go to is the scene when the eggs start cooking themselves. And Sigourney Weaver opens up that...
that's scary.
Yeah, and Weaver opens up that refrigerator door, right? And, she sees those, like, the ghouls in the... it's a really cool... Zool, yeah. It's a really, really cool concept for a movie. It worked really well. I really enjoyed it. And it's a film that I will always look back on with fond memories. It's funny because, like, I was going through a list of all the 80s movies, and I was going in between a lot of different things. Like, I could also have even gone with Karate Kid here, because Karate Kid was a film that dealt with bullying. His character was bullied and kind of overcame those odds of being the new kid in school. And I always thought that was I guess technically I did deal with that. I was a new kid in school in 10th grade, and I dealt with bullying. So looking back on Karate Kid, as much as I love that film, I would say that was a very close second. If you're looking at best, I do want to cheat real quick and just mention one film that I think I almost went with.
That's good. Kevin's literally been trying to figure out his pick for the last 48 hours while we're on the cruise.
Yeah, and I couldn't justify choosing this, but I think one of the greatest movies ever came out of the 80s, and that was Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. And I remember studying that in college, and that film having such an impact on me from a cinematography standpoint and the way he chose his shots. I know this is not a best thing, this is a favorite thing, but I just wanted to highlight that film because it is such a great masterpiece. But ultimately, my 80s blend pick is going to be Ghostbusters. Lauren is Back to the Future Part 1. I miss you guys. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be on the show, but we are, again, in the middle of the East China Sea on the way to Nagasaki before we go to Tokyo. And we did get to go to Shanghai prior to that, which is where Spike Jonze shot the exterior shots for Her to make LA look futuristic in that film.
And by the way, Shanghai literally looks like Her, like the overcast grayness. I felt like I was like literally living in Her the whole time I was there.
Yeah, and I know we're going long here. I'm sure Gabe is probably pulling his hair out because this is a long audio, and Lauren's wrapping me up. But yeah, so we miss you guys, and I'll talk to you guys soon. But hopefully you guys had a great show. I'm sure you did, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Love you guys. See ya. Dunkirk.
Obviously, thank you very much to Kevin for taking the time out of his vacation to record his 80s blend pick. Jake and I do not know what he texted or what he sent in because we were trying to get him on text. And he's obviously very, very busy tracking down. Yes, what?
We
Jake
have some breaking news if you are so interested.
I love breaking news.
In the middle of the show.
Yes.
Tweeted just a moment ago, 12 minutes ago. Yes. Zoe Kravitz will be playing Selena Kyle in the new Batman movie.
Stop. Really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I like her. I think she's very talented.
That's kind of awesome.
Now, granted, the headline says Selena Kyle, not Catwoman.
Okay.
I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if it means anything, but they're not saying it doesn't say Catwoman. Says Selena
That's
Kyle.
a really good. That's really great. I love that. Yeah, Gabe is saying great. Fandango is reporting Catwoman. Fandango's reporting Catwoman. She's gonna be Catwoman, obviously. I mean, but that's really good. That's a good. I can't wait to see casting ramp up on that movie because I think they're gonna have multiple villains in that film. Oh God, I want to go to that set.
Tell them who you are.
Dear Warner Brothers, I would like to go to that set, please.
Also, I want Clint Eastwood
on the show.
Teach it.
Or just in general.
Oh my God, I've seen enough Clint Eastwood three-ways in my life, which is never something I ever expected to say. But if you haven't seen The Mule, that joke makes no sense to you. And if you've seen The Mule, you know more about Clint Eastwood three-ways than you ever expected to know.
You actually see The Mule. All right, audience picks. Andrew DeLeon says, Can't Buy Me Love. I love that movie so much.
What a great movie.
Can't Buy Me Love is tremendous. Such an entertaining film. You threw shit on my house. That's like one of the saddest lines. Amanda Young, Katie Simmons, and many, many others went with Back to the Future. Tracy Stringfellow said American Werewolf in London. I swear I saw American Werewolf in London more than once.
No, it's got to be.
Twice.
Didn't London come out? Oh no, Paris came out in the 90s. London's the original. Yeah,
London is the original. Yes.
Ooh, what a good movie. Rick
Patrick
Baker,
Knight said
baby.
Real Genius. Real Genius is a great comedy. I'm surprised some of these John Hughes movies didn't get more love. Like not a lot of people. Like Kimberly Sue said Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But I kind of thought we'd get a lot more John Hughes films.
Yeah, no Breakfast Club?
No one that I saw said Breakfast Club. And then TJ Winfield said Die Hard. So thank you very much, TJ, for being on my page. Again, we want to point out how much participation we had this week. We will do 90s blend at some point in November, and that will bring us up to 2000 blend in December. You guys want to know what next week's game is? Triggered a little bit off of the 80s because there's a bunch of movies. Oh, yeah, some people were putting up like Big Trouble in Little China and The Thing. I saw each of those
John
mentioned.
Carpenter had a good 80s.
Well, that's why we are going to play next week, hashtag John Carpenter Blend.
Oh, wait.
So
didn't we do that
strap
already?
in for that challenge. Gabe says no. No, I guess we did not do that one yet. So you can obviously go to social media. You're going to backtrack through and see if we did. Feels like we might have. You say we don't?
We did.
Gabe says we didn't. Well, for now, we're playing John Carpenter Blend with Ruben Fleischer and Edward Norton. We'll find out what their picks are on next week's show. You can obviously go to social media and you can play along by using the hashtag John Carpenter Blend. You can send us your picks via email at ReelBlend@cinemablend.com. That's ReelBlend @cinemablend.com. I'm going to take this time to also plug the fact that we made it official on last week's show, and we're hearing from some people on social media already that we are going to be doing a very special live event in Washington, D.C. In conjunction with our 100th episode.
Are we recording live in front of people?
Sort of sharing. Do what now?
Are we recording live in front of people?
No, I don't think we're going to do that because we want to have fun while we're with these people and not necessarily work. But if we learned anything from the Chicago episode, we get into most of the debates that you would normally hear on an episode of the show as people want to talk to us and say, what do you mean Kill Bill is one movie? Or do you really hate Forrest Gump? And questions like that we love to answer to people in person. And so hopefully a lot of people come out to the DC event. Now, I made a suggestion that Gabe was working really hard at finding a location for this event. He says that's not necessarily true, but he's running out of time and is going to have to pick something soon. So we'll be able to share details in terms of like a date and potential locations soon. So keep it tied right here because Gabe, we're going to be doing this soonish. And so we should move on that, right? Yes? No? Nothing? Gabe's just staring at me.
For God's sakes, do your job, Gabe.
Produce, damn it.
Produce, man.
Yes. All right. Kevin will be back with us next week. You can follow him on social media at Kevin McCarthy TV. Jake is at Jake's Takes. I'm at Sean_O'Connell. Of course, follow the entire show. We're picking up a lot of followers on our Twitter feed where people are interacting on a regular basis and forming regional camps. We have Philly blenders, DMV blenders, and of course the Chicago blenders have formed their own little tight-knit family. We cannot tell you guys how much we appreciate the fact that that type of interaction between us and the show just continue to sort of grow it. The singer Cher does not listen to us. We cleared that up last week.
We don't know that.
But share the show with your friends. If you think that this is something that they would enjoy, these interviews that we do or the blend games that we play or the way that we react to trailers like Dolittle, you can get it every single week here on ReelBlend. So tune in next week for our next episode where we might have Ed Norton if you didn't hear him this week. And until then, Dunkirk?
Dunkirk?
It's weird when he's not here.
Yeah.
Dunkirk.
Done?
What else would we say if we didn't say Dunkirk?
The good Christopher Nolan movies? The Dark Knight!
The Prestige.
That sucked.
No! Stop it.